Welcome to the Mind Sensei podcast. I'm your host, Peter Taz, and I'll be taking you on a journey to the world of martial arts and introduce listeners to some of the most inspiring and knowledgeable practitioners from around the world. Whether you're a seasoned martial artist or a curious beginner, or just enjoy hearing a great story, the Mind Sensei podcast Down Under has something for everyone. So tune in, sit back, and let us take you on a journey through the world in martial arts. Let's talk about other aspects of your life that don't involve martial arts. So we know what you do for a living. Do you have any hobbies outside the martial arts and work?
Well, I have 4 Jeeps, okay, 2 older ones and two kind of newer ones. And any chance that I can take my family, my wife and my kids, and get up into the mountains or out into the desert and spend time out there. So now my kids have both just recently gotten out of college, so they're getting on with their life. But so we would used to take trips where, me and my wife were in one Jeep and my daughter and my son were in another Jeep. And we would get some pretty remote exploring in with those Jeeps. And so I bought an older one and I restored it. And then I bought my boy an older one, and we're in the process of restoring it, but he's just gotten out of college and he's started a new career with a big construction firm. And so I don't see him as much as I'd like to. My daughter, she's working in the area as well. She's a photojournalist major, and she's just recently taken over the social media for my company. So she's going to be doing more video and photo work and social media for, my school, at Bulot Company, the movie, and those types of things. So that's pretty much everything else I do, Peter, is pretty much related to work. I mean, we train, fitness is big. I've got a gym at my home. I got a gym out at my facility. So I like to work out 5, 6 days a week. And then, we take trips when we can, getting away with the family and spending as much time with them in those Jeeps and seeing the sights we like the camping and the remote locations and, the hiking and mountain climbing, all those types of things. So that's something we do. And I have another YouTube channel called Adventure Backcountry. It's not for commercial or anything. That's just where because I always bring my cameras or a camera. I film my trips. When I have time, I edit them and I put them up on that channel there, so everybody in the family can see them and other people can see them or see where we're at or just the essence of the landscape and the locations. So but my whole life has pretty much made my career and my hobbies intertwined, if I should say. So
yeah, pretty similar to most people. So you don't play any instruments?
Can you see behind you?
Guitar, yeah.
I don't play near as much as there's another one down there. I don't know if you can see it. I don't play near as much as I used to anymore, because of time.
Yep.
I actually was something I always kind of kept up with as a kid was playing guitar and such, and that's decent at one time. And I go through spurts where I'll pick it up and I'll work at it for a couple of months and put it down. Life goes on. The thing that I've probably done consistent on the side, I would say would be fitness. I like all aspects of fitness. The weight training approach, the cardiovascular approach, and now it's about how long can I keep my body at a level to where I can still do the things that I like to do because I'm 64 going on 65 now, and I'm still on a SWAT team. I got to hang with those young guys, so that means I gotta stay with it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you reside in Dallas area, USA,
Right.
but have you've traveled to some other countries? Tell us a little bit
Oh,
about that.
I've been all over the place. I haven't been to Australia, But like I said, I've been to Europe quite a bit, worked over there, in several places, Bosnia being one of them, Afghanistan. Okay, I was amongst the first security contractors to go into Afghanistan back in 2002. And then I've lived in Colombia for, almost 9 years. I actually lived down there. I mean, that was home for that time. And I've worked in other places that I've gone to and come back from. Unfortunately, I haven't been to a lot of those places for vacationing reasons. It's like my family, all of them except me, just got back from a trip from Europe. They went over there strictly for pleasure, but I stayed here and worked, taught a couple of classes while they were gone, and worked a couple of shifts and at work and so forth. So most of my travel has been having something to do with the job, or, I've been as far away as Argentina to do seminars, to do a seminar or teach a mobile class. So yeah.
What do you have you studied other arts as well? Have you done any cross training?
Yeah, I have. So there was a time when I would go out and I would take a private from Larry, and then I would zip over to Huntington Beach, take a couple of privates from Burton Richardson. I don't know if you know him.
No.
Uh,
What style is
he
he?
he's one of Don Inosanto's guys, Burt Richardson. He's one of the original Dog Brothers. Do you remember those guys?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I was wanting the Filipino stick and knife stuff. So I go over and I take a few privates from him. And then of course, Michael Park, Master Park, with the Japanese arts, he did the ground fighting class. So I, incorporated some of his stuff, and he's also into Kaji Kempo. He's a high ranking at that. That's mainly what he does now. So I've been to you can go to some of his classes from time to time, and just see what those guys are doing. I dabbled in a lot because, when these people would come in to film, like I filmed, geez, we must have did close to 20 videos on Wing Chun Kung Fu. Okay. And, I got a lot out of that, the things of that I liked, the trapping aspects and the energy drills and the chain punching. Um, and then my student Mark Redding, he was big into Jeet Kune Do, so I got interested in some of that for a while. So I actually, I learned some of it from him, some of what they did, and so he still does that to this day. And then I filmed a series on Jeet Kune Do from a gentleman named Mike Keller, and he's the one who hooked me up with Ted Lukai Lukai, and then I was gonna film Larry Hartzell. Do you remember him? Okay, but he got sick. Okay, but we were in the final stages of solidifying a deal to do his videos. So I spent time with those guys on the with the Jeet Kune Do, and that and so forth. Yeah, just different stuff over the year, but nothing pulled me away from Kempo because it was like a lot of what I saw in other styles, especially looking at it through a lens and then looking at it again while you're editing it and seeing it over and over and again, and then watching these guys perform. Somewhere in Kempo, there was something either similar or equal to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think Joe Rebello said it well. He's because you know what he's like. He's like he's got a photographic memory, so anything he sees he remembers in great detail. And been studying all these different styles, and he says what I found was going to other systems and learning other stuff. It was coming back and relating it to Kempo was called confirmation of the facts of what we're doing in Kempo.
Yeah, and a lot of it that's well said. A lot of it was like his you know, what can they teach me versus what I've already learned through Kempo. And like I said, there was some stuff in there. Okay. Like I like the way that the Wing Chun guys would use those chain punches to drive down the center line. But when you look at it, it's just a series of vertical punches, is all that it is. Okay. But just their method of applying it at that one particular opening, when it became available. Yeah, that was, just one example. I went through my phase where we had the Wednesday, you know, Master Park would come over and teach a ground fighting class just for my brown and black belt. So we had about 10 or 12 of them would show up on Wednesdays, and we would do. Now this was Japanese jujitsu, okay, but it wasn't that dissimilar from it was ground fighting, um, but it wasn't so much focused on the tap out as it was the submission, as it was ending the fight. So I went through that phase and that was before the jujitsu, the BJJ and stuff exploded to where it is now. Okay. But in the back of my mind, it was always there that one incident that I went through with ground fighting where I almost cost me. So it was always with caution, I should say. I've dabbled in a lot of different things, a lot of different things. And just by the time you go through 2 systems, the Tracy's and the Parkers, and you look at all these different, exposures that you have. I mean, just, some of the forms that we did in Tracy's were traditional kung fu forms, right? So it just kinda lets you see a lot of the different movements and one's gotta decide from themselves, pick and choose what do you wanna stick with, and like I said, I to the point where, now I just do what works, okay? I don't work techniques up and down the list anymore. I can, and if somebody wants to learn them, I can sure show them all that. But, when I teach now, like I have a class, it's, an hour and a half to 2 hours every Wednesday night, that I'm not working, of course, which is most of the time I can make that happen. And, we focus on, we call it street defense, and we focus on different aspects. We may work things from the freestyle techniques. We may work things from a Filipino drill. We do a lot of the sticks, from Kali, but I may link into some of the Kenpo. So it just kind of depends on what I feel like doing. But do I still keep up with the curriculum? Yeah, I do. Sure, I do. It's a model, Kenpo. The Kenpo concepts are a model for everything that I teach. I utilize them heavily in my tactical courses, just like I use the tactical concepts heavily in my martial arts training. Okay, so especially the aspects of how the body reacts under stress. My martial arts teachers, a lot of them don't do a really good job of explaining the aspects of stress response uh, in the dojo because they don't experience them in the dojo, but you're sure as hell going to experience them out on the street. And if a student doesn't know to expect that, then how are they going to know how to train to deal with it? I'm talking about the physiological effects
Yep. Yep.
that you go through, So having experienced that on, thousands of occasions, I integrate that into my training as well as the other stuff that I learned out on the streets. Sometimes simplicity may be the better answer than sophistication to a confrontation.
So, what are your thoughts on cross training and with the prevalence of ground fighting now? Do you incorporate any of that into your curriculum when teaching?
I do, but I don't have a structured, and it's more geared towards if you're down there, what do I need to do to get back on my feet again? Okay. So, submit the guy. That's one thing, but what are you going to do after that? So, um, and being out on the streets is what's taught me that because that wasn't the only experience that I've had with that before. So when we look at doing things on the ground, to me, my life tells me it's all about not wanting to be there. So yes, you have to learn some things to be able to stay alive the time that you're down there. Does that make sense? Okay. But on the other hand, there's some instructors out there that are saying that, oh, if you don't have at least a blue belt level of jujitsu, you're not going to survive in a street fight. Well, Peter, I got 43 years of being out on the streets out there in numerous countries, and I have yet to run into a jujitsu guy on the street. Okay. So I think personal preference has a lot to do with it as well. Um, it's okay to train for something because you enjoy it. So you have people out there nowadays saying, "Oh, well, you spent 10 years training in Kenpo or Aikido and you wasted those 10 years because it's never going to work on the street." Well, working on the street is more about the practitioner than the art, number one. And number two, if that person enjoyed those 10 years and they got what they wanted to get out of it, fitness, personal growth, camaraderie, whatever their objective was, what business is it of yours, what they did with that. But that seems to be the common, get a warrior little thing these days.
I think it's the mindset. The mindset. You're told better than mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what I'll get on these forums because they're full of of people bashing Kenpo on there.
Yeah.
Now, I agree that Kenpo nowadays is not portrayed the way that it used to be because you got so many people that have learned it, and I see there's so many people just filming shit with these things right here, and it's void of concepts, theories, and principles. And you can tell it's not good Kenpo, but there's thousands and thousands of people making videos with these. And so that's what people say. And they've learned from all these other videos instead of through the school of hard knocks, I should say. So that's just my take on it.
How long have you been teaching is the question.
Oh, so, well, like I said, back, even when I was a brown belt, I was teaching at the school, but it was part of making a contribution then. I didn't formally teach for money until I got my 3rd degree. And I asked Mr. Tatum, I said, "Mr. Tatum, do you think that I am at the level now to where I can open up and start teaching?" And he said, "Yes." And I was kind of following Mr. Parker's books. You got your junior instructor on up to, I was a 3rd degree, an associate instructor. I don't even recall at this point. I have to look it up again. So, and so he said yes. So I had a garage school at my house first, just like many other people. And after that is when I moved that to where me and my taekwondo buddy at the police department, we split that shopping center space up there. And that lasted for, I don't know how long. And then I moved off onto my own space because my classes were growing. And I stayed at, I think I had like 1,200 square feet. And then I moved again to another shopping center, very busy intersection. And then I had 1,800 square feet. And then the spot next to me, this is all during the mid-90s, came open. And I went up to 3,600 square feet with a gym at one time. And I mean, we had all kind of activities going on. And this was when my TV show was booming and so forth. And so I produced a lot of black belts out of that school. And, with the full 24 curriculum and good black belts. A lot of them still do it to this day. So yeah.
How many black belts would you have in your lineage?
Ooh, I would probably say close to 50. I would have to do some digging. Like I said, I lost.
And have you mapped your family tree?
No, I lost a lot of my records when I had a fire in my office. In 2015, it burned completely to the ground. I mean, I had a copy of every certificate. I lost everything. So gis, uniforms. Now, luckily, my certificates I had at home. Okay. And they didn't burn. All right. So I have my recent ones, some of my younger ones burned, but everything I got from Mr. Tatum up, and I've got my 3rd, 2nd, and 1st degree brown belts. They're right here on the wall that I got from the IKKA with Mr. Parker's signature on them. I got all 3 of those still. Okay. Everything else burned. So all of my school records, my my copies of my certificates, everything burned. A lot of my memorabilia too. So no, I have not mapped out my family tree. At that point, I was like, yeah. So
Okay. And so do you have a organization or is it just a school?
no, no. I mean, I was part of Larry's organization and so forth, and then I was linked up with the Kaji Kenpo guys here, and I just kind of networked with them, and I was like an affiliate member of them, and that just basically means that they would participate in seminars and different grading events together. We would just kind of back each other up in those types of things. But no, just I've always pretty much been on my own. I was affiliated, I guess I still am, with this IKK Kenpo, and we were doing some things for a while. We had a testing board, and we were doing some video lessons through Zoom. Now I was never popular with that, but that's the thing. You got to do that these days. So I'll do them. I have a few black belts that they're not in the state, and we do stuff on Zoom. Okay, so as long as they're willing to learn, I'm gonna support that, because like Mr. Tatum said, it somebody else will, right? So, so yeah, we did some of that, but it's all kind of died down lately. Some of that's me, because I've got so many irons in the fire. But yeah, I have a class that I run here on a weekly basis, and I'll keep that going for as long as.
Do you have a name for the school there or not?
No, it's Weapons Academy. Oh,
It's not.
right, St.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So is it on chimbulot.com or
That's weaponsacademy.com.
you have your own system patch?
I do. I don't have one. Can you see it on that DVD right there?
Yep.
It just says Tim Bulot's Kenpo Karate, or Academy of Kenpo Karate, on there, and it's just basically like every other patch. I mean, it's kind of a reworked Kenpo patch, because the Parker family would not allow anybody to use that patch. You recall all that copyright stuff, right?
That sort of destroyed everything, right? That just destroyed.
Right. So everybody went out and just kind of reworked it a little bit, and made up their own version of it. So, and I kind of did the same thing with mine. So I could go give you a big spill about, what it represents, but you know the deal. It's just a reworked version of a Kenpo patch, just like pretty much every other school has. And then, I've got Larry's patches on my gis, and then I have my Weapons Academy patch also, which I don't have one of those here, but if you look at Weapons Academy, you'll see it on the website, which is just a round patch with a shield and a sword, and rays of light and some other meaningful things on there. But so
Strategic Weapons Academy of Texas, is that it?
yeah, that's my school patch right there.
Oh yeah, SWAT, circular with a SWAT shield and a sword.
But that's more of a tactical oriented patch there than
Okay.
the.
So is this your full-time gig or you're still in the, is this after hours?
I do both.
Okay.
Yeah, it's full time. So, and I work, so I do both. I can take enough time off. It's like next week I have a course that's going to go Tuesday through Saturday. So that's what I'll be doing. But I've got that week off from work, so I don't work. That's that. With this week, I'm working Tuesday and Wednesday. I only work 2 days this week, or next week, I should say. So yeah, I can flex my hours.
So do you teach standard isosceles weave, or is that your basis of your,
Yep.
you don't do the center axis stuff that's come out?
No, I don't really want to get into the center axis, because there's some controversy around it here.
Yep.
My job has taught me that, because if I dwelled on things in the past, I don't know how it would be affecting me right now, because I see guys that do dwell on stuff in the past, and they're not in good shape psychologically.
Correct.
It's like I got asked about this the other day, when Delta Flight 191 went down north of DFW Airport. I was like the second one on scene. I was working right by there when when it went, and that was 140 dead on one call. You know, one call for service with 140 deceased people on it. It was a mess. I mean, it was a mess. So I was out there from the time that plane crashed till 10:30 at night. And so for the last couple hours, the fire had been out. All we were doing was marking and recovering bodies. That's it. And I was a filthy mess when we were finished with that. I went home and then I was asked about this just this last week. They said, "Did I have any aftermath?" Of course, I've been asked this a lot over the years from that particular call. And as far as I know, no. Some guys had a really hard time with that. I know one in particular that I knew really well that ended his career. And others had a really hard time dealing with that much death and destruction in that short amount of time. But then again, I have a way of just forget it. It's over.
Yeah, let it go. Yeah,
Let it go.
I think it's a good mantra and motto to have, is to.
But then again, internally, I don't know, Peter, how all that, over the years, how it impacts me now, because I have dreams and nightmares, and I wake up, you know, every night at the same time, racing heart, sweat, just I gotta calm down again. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what's causing them, but I don't feel like it's, you know, anything serious. But then again, who knows what behind the scenes from seeing all this and being all these close calls, over the years that does to somebody.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how martial arts has impacted your physical and mental well-being, both in and outside the dojo.
So as far as physical well-being is concerned, physical and mentally and spiritually, they all go together to me. I think it's a vehicle to just try to keep everything in sync. And, 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 and in the toughest of times, I have I've still got my martial arts, no matter how tough things are, I've got my martial arts, and it's an avenue to just get away from that and so forth. So, um, now I could see where, losing physical ability to do martial arts is more how you cope with it, because it's going to happen. So, right now I'm at the point in my life, and this is why Sean Kelly has this Zen of Kenpo seminar that I've participated as an instructor in the last 3 years. So how do we get the longevity out of it? Well, you don't beat the hell out of each other anymore, for one thing. So, you've gotta prolong that, I feel, but the psychological side of it is the other thing. And I think the martial arts is good for you there because it gives you an avenue to vent, but the personal growth that one gets, or they should get from that anyway. Okay. And so it's like I said, my martial arts and my tactical training, they go hand in hand. They're not separate from me. So it's like after every class, every session, that student should grow. Okay. They should experience that sense of accomplishment, and that should, attribute to some personal growth. Well, the instructor, if they see that and they feel that in the student, they kind of feed off of each other. You see what I'm saying? So, I think that avenue that you get from martial arts to experience that personal growth is just excellent for mental health and mental well-being across the board. Okay. The sense of achievement, people say, well, it's not about the rank. I get that. It shouldn't be about the rank, but if a student puts in certain amount of time, they do the requirements, they set the standard and they meet the standard, they should be able to experience some reward, which equates to growth for that. So the experience, for instance, of achieving a black belt, so
More than reward, it's recognition
it should.
of achieving it. Correct. Yeah.
So, and yeah, the recognition then goes with it. So it's a milestone in life, and then everyone thereafter that is. So, um, I appreciate those traditions, and I think they're damn healthy for you in all regards, psychologically, spiritually, and physically. It just keeps everything in tune. And when I'm having a bad day, okay, I can just walk through a couple of forms and focus on good form within the form, and my day just got better. It's like a reset button. You know what I mean? So but I think a lot of that has to do with how, if one knows how to use the martial arts as a vehicle, as a conduit for that. And I try to impart that on my students as well. So, you may come to class with all kinds of personal issues on your mind, but hopefully when you leave class, they're not there anymore. They still exist in your life, but they're not the foremost thing on your mind. We've replaced that with some constructive substance to fill that space, and like I said, hit that reset button. Okay? So, and that's what aggravates me so much about these keyboard warriors that get on there, and they're so caught up about with what works on the street and what doesn't work on the street. Okay? I get that. Better than the ones typing that. Trust me, after 43 years and still being out there, I know the streets. But there's the other side of the martial arts that we're talking about right now that is every bit, or if not more important. And if a person gets the benefit from that, you know, and they they they're improving their quality of life because of that, who gives a damn if it's Tai Chi or Aikido or whatever, you know? Let them get the benefit out of it, and who are you to bash them and tell them that they're wasting their time on it, okay? So
It's about same equivalent as people, overweight people going to the gymnasium and people making comments about that. You got to take your hat. You got to take your hat off to an overweight person who's got the courage to get up and walk into a gymnasium to do something about their position. Same in martial arts.
there are some people that are just, they're just stuck with a certain amount of body fat, and it's just that's the way it's going to be for them. And it doesn't mean that they're not healthy, and they get criticized for it. And I've seen it even on some of the videos I have on YouTube. I got a couple of guys that work with me, and one in particular has gone through leaps and bounds to try to. He's actually in the medical profession to lose weight, to include having stomach surgery. He was so desperate to lose it. It is what it is. But the guy is, he's as healthy as he can be. Moves really well, and he gets criticized for being on a video with me because, yeah, he's on the heavy side. So, but then there's the ones that don't have the self-respect. How about we just don't criticize? Period. Just
Yeah.
let people enjoy martial arts for what they are.
Right. Okay. So, what are your thoughts on personal development in martial arts? And
Well, I mean, it's huge. I think I kind of just really touched on that. And at the end of the day, okay, whatever goal you accomplish in martial arts shouldn't come easy. It should not come easy. Okay. It's a physical investment. Should be a pretty hefty time investment in it as well. There's a mental investment in it because you've got things that you have to learn and memorize. Okay. So it's a lot of work. So when you achieve goals in the martial arts, well, maybe these other tasks in life aren't so hard after all compared to what I just did. Okay. And I try to impart that. Usually I end every class even today. So I'll teach, say, an 8-hour tactical course. And I'll ask them, I said, did you guys get some personal growth out of that? When you're on your way home, I want you to reflect back on what you did today and what you accomplished out here. So it's on the instructor to kind of bring that out some as well. So over the years, I had a couple of students, I probably hurt them more than I helped them. And I learned as an instructor by doing that, by holding them back and not realizing that physically, this is good as this person is ever going to be. It's as good as they're ever going to be. And so I had to learn how to recognize that and kind of test them and promote them within their ability. So, and I see it in law enforcement all the time. Like, so we'll get a shooter and we'll have them in a class because you got to set the standard when you pass. They can't make the bar. Work with them for a while. No progress is made. They go to this other instructor. He works with them. No progress is made. He sends them, hey, I've tried them. Tim's tried them. Peter, here, you try. See if you can get this person up to standard. You work with them. They just don't have it. Okay? So that person cannot be a police officer because they can't pass the minimum standard because they just don't have it within them. So you're going to get a person like that. You think that they're going to be good at martial arts. I mean, some people just can't coordinate. So there's a couple that I can recall over the years that I probably should have tested because they were based on their ability. They were the best that they were going to be. And from a personal growth perspective, I probably set them back and stunted their self-confidence quite a bit by telling them, you're not ready to test until I see this, this, and this done exactly like that. Knowing that they just, their feet just aren't going to move that way. Their hands they're just not built that way. Does that make sense? So I've kind of learned to make some exceptions. I don't even want to call them exceptions, but just to work with people, and that's how they experience the growth when they do accomplish. So I'm like, who am I to get in the way of that if they're giving it the best that they can? And in this case, they were doing what they could.
Sometimes people stagnate on a belt, and
they do.
By holding them back, you don't do them any justice whatsoever. And you find once they get over that, correct. And
some of them, they just don't have the memory capacity. It's actually difficult for them to associate all the names with all the techniques and remember them. And so when you do a test, you'll call out a technique, and they freeze. And it's like, okay, we just did this yesterday. I broke it down for them, but they're lost.
Yeah.
So, that stunts personal growth. But I think in the long run, if people know how to use it, and if the instructors know how to bring it out, personal growth is
And then again, like I said, there's a standard for a reason, right?
Sure, there is, but a little bit of flexibility is okay in the martial arts.
Yeah.
They're not going against life and death. Okay, they let them move within their limit.
So how do you stay motivated and continue to progress in your journey, particularly during times of struggle and injury?
I think when you do something for so long, and then when you stop doing it or you miss doing it for a while, and then you feel guilty in that you have to make that up, it just becomes part of you. So, like with martial arts and fitness and all this other stuff, if I go, for a period of time where I can't do what I want to do with the martial arts, I find a project that will bring me back around. Okay. So, all right, what do I want to work on to perfect or to grow at this point? So right now for me, it's the movie. So I just did film my first fight scene in the movie. So that was my goal. And also my character in the movie had to gain about 15 pounds because I'm 12 years later, right? So part of it's now I've lost almost half of those 15 pounds. I got to lose the rest of them because I just got my ass handed to me, and I'm having an awakening here. So I find a project like that to motivate me to get going again. Okay. Or I'll do something with somebody that motivates me. Okay. So if I lose interest in something, I'll call up, say, Mark in Denton, he's running 2 full-time schools up there. Hey, Mark, let's let's do something. Let's do a video. Let's do a seminar. And so I'll set a little mini goal, short or intermediate term goal, and I'll work on that. And that brings me right back up again. We have to look into ourselves to stay motivated. Work keeps me motivated as well. And that's another reason why I'm having a hard time retirement, is because I don't want to going out on the streets and leading a shift out on the streets brings me fresh information every shift, because there's something violent that goes on that I have to deal with. And I learn from that. The streets are my teacher now. Okay. In that sense. So say if we have to go out there and deal with a situation and I'm breathing harder than I should be. Okay. I need to work on this or that. Or I have to, wrestle or subdue somebody and it didn't go the way, okay, I'll isolate what I need to work on. Or we do a SWAT raid and we made some mistakes as a team. We'll isolate those areas we made a mistake, and the next training session, we're working on those isolated areas there to better ourselves. So, so motivation for me comes pretty easy. Just as my pants feel a little tighter than they used to be, I don't like that. That motivates me to change it, So that's kind of the way that I've been, just really, really driven in that respect, Peter, to try to stay on top of things.
And what advice would you have to someone starting out in martial arts?
If somebody's just getting started, to be successful, what has always been successful for me in the martial arts is it's a kind of a combination of finding something that you're good at with something that you really enjoy, and put those two things together. Okay. Now, there's a lot of options out there on the martial arts, and these neophytes that are just getting into it have got to learn to do their homework. Okay. My success, I feel, I'm not the most successful person out there, but I've had a pretty good run. I think lineage has everything to do with that. Okay. And that I can relate my lineage, from here to here. And people want to use this for a teacher these days, this damn thing right here, and what they can see on somebody's videos. That's not lineage. You need personal relationship with the best person you can find to establish that lineage. And I think that grooming that you get from that has everything to do with the success. So it's got to be a combination of, if you're not enjoying it and you don't feel like you're any good at it, you're going to burn out, period. Those are the ones that don't make it past yellow belt. They're going to burn out. But a lot of that, how much is that on the instructor? So do your homework. If you're just getting started out, do your homework. Check the instructor, check his background, check his lineage, and decide if you want to be part of that or not. And then if it fits, stick with it. Don't train 6 months here, 6 months there, 6 months there, where this guy contradicts this guy, this art contradicts that art, this guy badmouths that. There's too much of that going on. Okay? The best person you can find, develop the relationship, do your homework, and be part of the lineage. That's success in the martial arts to me.
If you had to impart some wisdom, have an inspirational quote for some of our listeners, what would that be?
I think it's the best quote I give people is combining something with you like or something you love with something you're good at is a recipe for success. Okay. That's a recipe for lifelong success right there, no matter what you do. I think that'll get it. Other than that, I got a lot of quotes, so um, you know, I'll leave that one at that.
Okay. And then are there any books that you can recommend to our listeners or ones that you've been featured in?
I bet books that I've been featured in, I don't know that I had, I was asked about doing these journey series and that these different people were writing the Kenpo journey and some of those other, but I was overseas when all that was going on. So I didn't have time to, I've got a book here that did a story on me. I'll show it to you here in a minute. But books for reading you're talking about, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still a fan of Ed Parker's Infinite Insights books to this day. Okay. But there's two books that I bet nobody has ever mentioned to you before that are full of wisdom for the streets. So you got to remember, I come from the streets. They're full of wisdom from the streets, and they're called Tactical Edge and The Street Survival. And they're by Caliber Press. Okay. Now, this is geared towards law enforcement survival, but anybody can find these books on Amazon. But you will learn more about a street fight and staying alive on the streets, no matter who you are, from those books.
So Tactical Edge and Street Survival, was that?
Street Survival by Caliber Press. So a book that I'm featured in, this one here is Behind the Texas Badge.
Yep.
And I'm on page 80. I mean, you see that? I'm on page 80.
Okay. Yep.
Here's a story about me in this book. Here's mine. Let's see what else is in here. Yeah, I think that's it. I got 2 or 3 whole pages in there. And that's just kind of a summary. So this book is about, I don't know, 50, 60 law enforcement officers around the state. And I was picked because of my background and some of the things I've done through law enforcement here, that I guess, I don't know, I made the news a few times, I guess you could say. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And for people interested in training with you, reaching out, are you open to people contacting you?
Yeah, weaponsacademy.com.
Yep.
My email's on there and so forth, or they can get me through bulotmedia.com.
So you're in Waxahachie in the Dallas area? Waxahachie,
Dallas.
top of Dallas area in USA.
Huh?
So yeah, okay. Well, that brings us to the end of the interview. So thank you, Mr. Tim Bulot, for being on the Mind Sensei podcast and sharing your journey, sir. Been a pleasure talking to you and hearing your story. So thank you for being on.
Okay, Peter. Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it. We covered a lot of ground, and I hope the viewers, get something out of it. If not, a little bit of enjoyment in listening to your podcast here.
Yeah, it'll be good. I'm sure they'll get something from it.
I'm your host, Peter Taz, and you've tuned in to the Mind Sensei podcast from Down Under. We want to take a moment to thank all our listeners for tuning in to the Mind Sensei podcast. We appreciate your support and hope our show has been both informative and entertaining for you. If you haven't already done so, we would like to invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Finally, we'd like to thank our guests for sharing their knowledge and experience with us. Without their generosity, this podcast would not be possible. Thank you again for listening to the Mind Sensei podcast Down Under. We hope that you continue to join us on this journey through the world of martial arts.